Hi, I'm Jim Gordon.
And I'm Lita Leapins.
And welcome to another edition of Our City Tonight.
Well, Jim, we're here at Hubcast Studios, home of our production partners.
That's right, Lita. Boy, we're already into March. The year is already flying by. Spring is right around the corner, as is our next show.
Dressed in black, she's a hungry child.
Well, as we continue our Music Icon series, our next guest really epitomizes the soundtrack of our lives. He is one of the few Canadian artists that has had a #1 hit as a solo artist, a #1 hit as a lead singer of a group, and a #1 hit as a songwriter. He is 3-time Juno Award winner, Canadian Songwriter Hall of Fame inductee. We are so pleased to welcome to our city tonight, Nick Gilder.
Hi, Lita. Hi, Jim. How are you guys?
We'd rather be doing this in person, Nick,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
It's great to have you on the show.
And it's wonderful to be. Great to be.
Hey, listen, let's lots to unpack here, as I like to say. One of the things we want to talk about is that you were born in London, grew up in Vancouver. Because there's so little live music in our town these days, unfortunately, can you talk a bit about just the 70s music scene in Vancouver? Because you're playing everywhere, every type of gig, every type of venue, and through that you develop Sweeney Todd, who go on to make a #1 hit with Roxy Roller. Talk about Vancouver in the 70s.
Yeah, there was nightclubs on like every corner downtown. Like, you know, there was like hundreds of them, it seemed, you know, and we played every one of them. And the high schools and the universities. And eventually managed to get to a hit record, which was, of course, Roxy Roller. A producer came down, our manager, Barry Samuels, came down and brought Martin Scher, and we went in the studio. We cut Roxy, which was the first song Jim and I had ever written, and it went on to become #1, you know. And then Jim and I found ourselves in Los Angeles the following year as things were changing very rapidly in our lives for a multitude of reasons, you know. And yeah, it was a very exciting time in music.
Definitely. Well, we've seen you all over the news. I mean, you were on American Bandstand. You were like a hot group. But you also went on to have a very, very incredible solo career, and that you developed a #1 hit from that as well. Tell us a little bit about what it's like being a part of a group and then going on to become a very successful solo artist.
I think the sights and sounds of Los Angeles is truly, in Hollywood, I think in particular, was the inspiration, you know, for Hot Child in the City after we'd been there for about a year. Just if you wherever downtown in the 70s, I don't think it's really changed much. You know, it was a lot of folks gravitate. It's like a huge magnet for folks that want to become movie stars and have dreams, which is great. You know, so it's a real celebration of life, which is what Hot Child really is, you know. And it went to #1, and we went out on tour all across North America with all the big bands at the time, you know, Styx, Foreigner, Peter Gabriel, the Cars, oh, you name it, we were on the bill with them, you know. So it was a very exciting time, and it still is in a lot of ways, because we're out every summer, except for last year. Hopefully we'll get out there this year and rock with you.
Hey, Nick, one of the things that people may not know about you is the incredible body of work you have as a songwriter. Lita mentioned #1. People may not know that you co-wrote the #1 hit from 1984, Warrior by Patti Smythe, and Scandal. Talk a bit about your work as a songwriter, because there is a list of people: Bette Midler, Joe Cocker, Pat Benatar, Tony Basil, a whole list of people that you have written for.
Yeah, well, the Warrior, I had the chorus and got together with Holly, and, you know, she was playing the piano, and I said, well, let me sing you this. And I sang her the chorus of The Warrior, and before you know it, we had a whole song. You know, that's really it. How these things happen is a mystery. I don't know how that happens, but it's a wonder. Where does that even come from, you know? But I went home and I finished the lyrics and played it for Mike Chapman, who was doing scandal at the time. And he said, I'm going to take this to #1, and he did. He really
And Nick,
did.
Nick, we know that you'd be touring currently right now if we weren't in the situation we are in worldwide. Let's jump to present day and talk about, just as we wrap up here, your great quarantine video that came together. Well, tell us how that came together for Roxy Roller.
Well, you know, one of my first professional gigs in Los Angeles was at Doug Weston's Troubadour. And I met Cherie Curry and her twin sister, who you can't tell them apart, literally. They came up to the dressing room, and ever since then, you know, we've somehow once in a while managed to get in touch with one another. And I followed the career of the Runaways, you know, which yielded Lita Ford and Joan Jett, of course, and I think everybody in that band has done something. And she said, you know, would you sing on this Roxy track? And she sent me a track and then sent it off to Susie, who had also recorded Roxy Roller, you know, right around the time that Roxy was a hit here. And she managed to have some success with it on the BBC in England. So it was a natural to get together and do this quarantine video and put some smiles on people's faces, hopefully.
Hey, Nick, thank you so much for joining us. It's Nick Gilder. Hey, we should also mention, amongst all your awards just we leave, folks, look up The Cave, Vancouver's Cave. If you've never heard of it, Nick actually played there. Nick, thanks for joining us as our latest musical icon member in this series. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. You guys as well.
Well, we're back here at Hubcast Studios, where we shoot all of our on-location stuff. And of course, it's time for another movie review segment, as we've been saying for the last year or so, with theaters pretty much all being closed, or most of them anyway. People are watching a lot more at home, it goes without saying, and we're going to talk about a bunch of movies right now. And Lita, no surprise, Netflix is kind of leading the charge with most of what we're going to talk about today, and one that you have seen, I've not. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about Lupin.
Lupin is super popular. Now, this is a French mystery thriller. It's a retelling of a classic French story. Arsène Lupin, the world famous gentleman thief. This series follows Arsène Diop, who sets out to avenge his father for an injustice inflicted by a wealthy family. This series consists of 10 episodes. The first 5 have been released, and it stars Omar Sy.
I really love that guy. I just want to jump in again with him, The Untouchables, which came out in 2012. Oof, good film.
He is quite the leading man. He's very, very well known in France.
Okay, hey, let's talk about a film that came out last month. What can you say about Sophia Loren? She's an icon. She's a legend. It all sounds so cliche with her, but really, she is one of the few remaining people left from old Hollywood. She is here in a movie called The Life Ahead, and here's another family tie-in. It's directed by her son, Eduardo Ponte, son of Carlo, of course, the famous film producer. This is set in Italy. She is an aging, well, no longer practicing madam who is looking after kids in her home. I don't want to get a lot into the detail of her backstory, but there is a World War II connection, and she comes across a young boy, a Senegalese street kid, who robs her, and through a series of incidents is brought into her home by a third party. And it's all about the relationship between her and this young boy, who I've got to mention, I hope I get his name right, Ibrahima Gueye. I've always been amazed, Lita, at kid actors that act really well, because Sophia, of course, is Sophia, even at this age. But boy, I tell you, this kid is great. Look for The Life Ahead. It is also on Netflix. Staying with Netflix for your next film.
Yes, Ratched. Well, for those of you that remember Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the original definitely portrayed her as the evil nurse, but this is kind of a precursor. In the series, they're showing a unbroken Nurse Ratched, and I guess what led her to be her evil self up into the very well-known movie. We get to see her journey, and this stars award-winning actress Sarah Paulson.
She's pretty much good in everything that she does. Hey, let's one last Netflix film we wanted to mention, something for the whole family. You and I both saw this movie, an Aussie film, Penguin Blooms, starring the always enjoyable Naomi Watts. She plays Sam Bloom, an Australian woman who befriends an orphan magpie bird while recovering from a traumatic incident that has left her paralyzed from the waist down. Also stars Andrew Lincoln from Walking Dead, Love Actually, and the always interesting character actress Jackie Weaver. This is 90 minutes of just glassing up this film.
It's a very cool film. I, in fact, was aware of Penguin Bloom through social media quite some time ago, so I was actually quite thrilled and very attracted to a story about a super cute bird. I'm very into birds anyways.
Yeah, yes you are, if you look at Lena's posts on her personal Instagram account. Okay, look for that. It's Penguin Bloom. It's on Netflix. Okay, a couple of movies that normally would be in movie theaters right now, but with the pandemic, they're not. Want to talk about a couple films that are just stacked and made better by great actors. The first one is Supernova. This is with Stanley Tucci, Oscar nominee, and Oscar winner Colin Firth. They play Sam and Tusker, who are traveling across England in their old RV to visit friends, family, and places from their past because Tusker recently was diagnosed with dementia. And it's all about them just revisiting their relationship, obviously a long-time relationship between these two. Firth is a pianist, Tucci's a writer, obviously not writing anymore, but it's just all the people and places from their past. Lita, Supernova is a wonderful movie, again made better by actors. It's available now on Apple TV and VOD and virtual cinema. Last movie I want to mention quickly that's not out yet, but will be coming your way on March 16th on digital and VOD, and that is Crisis, starring Gary Oldman, Armie Hammer, Greg Kinnear, and Canada's own Evangeline Lilly, written and directed by Nicholas Jarecki, who did the movie Armitage. Do you remember the movies back they were really popular in the 90s, where in the 2000s of like a whole bunch of stories all moving at once, all going to converge somehow with a common thread. In this film, that's what you get. And the common thread is opioid addiction. We see it from all sides, the science, the crime, and those suffering from this addiction. Crisis comes out March 16th. Those are our movies. Lots to take in. Mm-hmm. We hope you enjoy what we've suggested.
Well, today we welcome award-winning local concert photographer and artist who's been working over 10 years with basically every local and international band that has come through our area. We have Christopher Edmonstone. Welcome to our city tonight, Christopher.
Hi, Lita. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, we're so excited. You have just written and photographed an incredible book, but before I jump into that, I'm going to ask you quickly, since you are a concert photographer and you've been backstage with so many great bands and artists, who's your most memorable from your last 10 years?
Well, I always have a hard time picking a favorite, so I usually give a range, but one that I think was really cool was July Talk and Metric at Pacific Coliseum. I had received a call from Peter from the band to come down the night of the show, actually, and do all their backstage photographs and photograph the show. So it was pretty great to be a part of the band when you're at a big show like that.
Yeah, and I know you're front stage for a lot, and you get a lot of great views, but yeah, you're right. Being personal, you're such a personal guy. I mean, we met through a lot of events as well. Speaking of personal and backstage, Stormy Daniels, you'll have to tell that quick story that you got to meet her in person at a very interesting time of her life.
Right. It was pretty much at the peak of her notoriety. She was on her book tour, and I got to have a few minutes with Stormy Daniels to take her picture. Very nice woman, and I was thankful for the opportunity.
Oh, very cool. Now we're going to jump into your book, Me, Myself, and I, a whimsical look at life in lockdown. This is a 50-page book, labor of love, and reflecting, really is an official souvenir book for the pandemic. Tell us how that came about, Christopher.
Well, at the beginning of the pandemic, I suddenly found myself, as a lot of people did, with a lot of extra time on their hands. And I thought that it would be interesting to start to document that. And it all started actually with the picture that is on the cover of the book. And it was depicting something that a lot of us were doing at the time, having some drinks, snacking, and watching the news endlessly. It caught on, and I just decided to continue on. There was a lot of things that about life in self-isolation that I knew that I could portray in a humorous way, and it gave me something to do.
Well, it's an awesome book. You had a lot of people start following you on social media as well, and I guess that kind of ramped it up. And I know at this point you've wound down your Kickstarter program, so the books hopefully will be available very soon. And it's just a great way. You put a little funny spin on a very serious time for us. And but as we wrap up, just tell us a little bit about what it took to create such a book. Having yourself, your image multiple times, not just three, not me, myself, and I. It's all over the pages.
Sure. Well, essentially, how the pictures are created is the camera would be put on a tripod, and then I would take a picture, triggering it remotely, and then move to a different position, take a picture, trigger the camera remotely, and then move to another position and take a picture. And then I would combine all of those images together in Photoshop. Things got a little bit more complicated technically as time went on and as the series progressed. I ended up taking a picture that I would then print out or put on a device like my phone, the laptop, or the desktop, and then using the same format of taking a picture and incorporating that picture of myself. And one of those pictures ends up making repeated appearances in some not so obvious ways throughout the series, and I call that the trapped version of me, and it goes on to symbolize life in self-isolation and the ongoing pandemic.
So thanks for joining us, Christopher. I started following you on Instagram at your Artist at Home project, which was absolutely incredible, as well as your Van City Star Wars, which I found awesome. All of your information will be found at the end credits of our show. And again, thanks, Christopher, for joining us today on Our City Tonight.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
This segment of Live Debt Free is brought to you by debtco.ca, helping Canadians get out of debt based on ability.
Today we're here at Global Restaurant, part of the Global group of restaurants, and we actually haven't filmed here before. We're on the second floor on West Georgia Street. I am joined by Chris Smith, who is the founder of debtco.ca. Now, Chris, before we get started on our topic today, I just wanted to, in prior shows, we've talked a lot about how vulnerable people are that are in debt and when debt's looming and how scared they are. It's not expensive to come see one of your team, is it?
It's not. In fact, we have free consultations, so you can sit down, and as you know, I've been there before, so we're certainly compassionate.
Okay, well, we've covered other topics. What is our topic for Live Debt Free today?
Today we're going to talk about something close to my heart, credit rating and credit score. Get a little handle on those things, and you know, sadly, I've been on both sides of that, in that I've had terrible credit and really haven't been able to borrow enough money to pay attention. And you know, I've got great credit, and I was fortunate enough to spend 1 month where I had my credit score increased by 76 points just by managing it. So it makes it interesting. And I've got a couple stats for you. 80%, according to CNBC, a report they put out, 80% of the population isn't aware that their credit score increases their cost of borrowing. And another 40% of the population incorrectly thinks that their marital status and age impacts their credit score, and it doesn't.
So why is a good credit rating important? I mean, you covered a little bit of that just now, but let's get into a little more detail.
Well, I guess to put a bit of shock factor into it, it's all about saving money. And if you take that $20,000 car loan, and you got one person at 4.99 as far as an interest rate, and somebody else at 30.9%, that could be a $5,000 or $10,000 difference in the cost of that car just in interest. So it's pretty substantial.
So how does one go about learning more about how to get a good credit score?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question, because I don't know about you, but when I went through school, zero recollection of learning anything about that.
No.
I believe now they're taking some, they're working on it to try to introduce this into the schools. But I talked to both my 20-year-old, well, my kids in their 20s today, and either of them had any, credit reporting, credit score education through school or university, which is interesting. So, you know what? We've got information on our website. The Financial Consumer Agency of Canada has information, as does Equifax and TransUnion.
And you got a great little story for us, talking about learning about credit score.
You know what? Yeah. So I built this little verbal quiz, and I had the pleasure of meeting 150 finance managers across the country and giving them this quiz. And at first it was kind of fun, but then I realized everybody was failing. And 149 out of 150 finance professionals that are paid anywhere from $50,000 to $400,000 a year failed miserably. So there's certainly a need out there.
Well, it certainly is a life skill, and I laugh because I learned square dancing in school, but I didn't learn about my taxes. Not trashing our education system by all means, but it is something that should be included.
Absolutely.
Now, can you share some credit report basics with us?
Absolutely, yeah. So in Canada, there are two credit reporting agencies, Equifax and TransUnion. Everything sort of flows through them. Credit scores themselves range from a low of 300 to a high of 900. The average credit score in Canada is 660. Yet I think we're overachievers on the West Coast, because what are we up to, about 687 here in Vancouver, which is great. And if you're looking for some sort of targets, I'd be trying to get a 660 score if you're below that. And as you exceed that, your rates are going to start getting better. And once you can get past a 741 score, then you're going to be getting the best rates available in most cases.
So Chris, can you give us an example how a credit card would show up on your credit rating?
Sure. So let's say you're looking at your Visa. The creditors report, they've got a series of numbers, as you'll see on the chart, and letters. And what's interesting is that, we've got, let's say, an R1, which is your Visa card. You pay your Visa card on time, it's going to show up as a 1. If you get sort of mid-scale, if you get over 120 days late on that card, that R1 is going to go to an R5. And if you don't pay that for months and months and months and have people banging on your door, that R1 is probably going to be an R9, and then you've got other problems to worry about. Okay,
all right. So you have 5 good tips for us on how to improve our credit score.
Absolutely. So, credit score is made up of these 5 components, so they're kind of translating into 5 tips. 35% of your credit score is based on your payment history. So the tip, pay your bills on time, and you'll maximize your 35%.
Okay.
30% of your credit score is based on managing your limits, so sort of credit utilization. If you've got a $10,000 limit on your credit card, if you keep that under $3,500, your credit score will go up. If you exceed that, your credit score is going down. Then we've got length of credit history at 15%. So the longer the stuff is there, the better it's going to be. But the tip is, don't get rid of old credit cards. Let's say you did a balance transfer from one Visa to another at a great new rate. Well, that balance transfer is actually going to go against you, because it's eliminating the old good stuff that you have. And then we've got credit applications. So if you're out there and you're credit seeking and applying for things all the time, well, that's going to go against you. And in fact, if you can consolidate either shopping for a car or shopping for a mortgage into a 2-week period of time, that's only going to negatively impact your credit as if you went to one spot. Whereas some people shop for a year for a car and their credit ends up being terrible.
Okay, so the last tip.
Last tip, yeah, there we go. Last tip is just diversity. That's probably the best way to say it.
Okay.
Just have more things. Have a mortgage, have a credit card, have a line of credit.
Excellent, excellent advice. Chris, we don't normally do this, bring somebody else onto your segment, but who do we have standing beside you?
Yes, today we've got Rocky Sharma of Century 21 Coastal Realty, and you know what? When I am looking for real estate information in the Lower Mainland, this is the man I go to.
Perfect. Now, welcome, Rocky. We're very excited to announce that you are our new real estate expert on the show. Give the audience just a little teaser of what you might be talking about in an upcoming episode.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you very much for having me on the show. So stuff that I want to talk about is what's happening in this crazy market right now. People are bidding on homes. There's 20, 30 multiple offers happening. Also, I want to touch base on how everyone's kind of moving out towards the east. From Vancouver, selling their condos and moving towards to the valley. And also, I want to help and educate clients on, hey, when you're purchasing a house, what to look for. So there's a couple of little topics I want to talk to you guys about when we start our show. But yeah, that's about it.
Wonderful. And taking the stress out of purchasing your home, one of the biggest purchases you make in your lifetime. So we also, before we go, we want to thank Global Group for hosting us today. And do look for Global Restaurant. We will have that in the next episode coming up on Our City Tonight.
This segment of Live Debt Free was brought to you by debtco.ca, helping Canadians get out of debt based on ability.
Well, we've got a great crew that work in the booth there. Hubcast, it's just they're talking in our ear. You never hear it at home. Anyway, we're back here at Hubcast Studios where we began the show. Lita, it's time to say goodbye. Before we do, let's tell people, as we always do, about where they can find past episodes and all our social media.
I sure will. You can see all of our past episodes of Our City Tonight on our YouTube channel. We'd love you to follow us there. As well as any ideas and comments, reach out to us on our social media on Instagram, Twitter, or our Facebook page.
That does it. Thanks for watching. I'm Jim Gordon.
I'm Lita Leapin.
We'll see you on the next edition of Our City Tonight.
Outdoor wear for Jim and Lita provided by Helly Hansen, alive since 1877.
Soluzione Spa Products, a national luxury spa product distribution company located in North Vancouver, British Columbia. They have been successfully supplying and supporting spas across the country since 1991.